Okay, good afternoon, folks. Today we have Three Squares Awareness Day, and we have folks from really around our community, and welcome to you all here in House Human Services Committee. We're going to hear from some of you, and what we'd like to do first is just to go around the room, because this is first time in this committee for some of you, at least this session. So we'll do introductions first, and then we'll have Nora come up and get us started. My name is Teresa Wood, and I'm from Waterbury, and I also serve Bolton, Fuel Score, and Huntington.
I am Ray Garofano. I serve Essex and Essex Junction.
Hey everyone, I'm Jubilee McGill from Bridport, and I also serve Middlebury, New Haven, and Weybridge.
Welcome, I'm John Eastis, and I serve Guilford and Vernon.
Good afternoon, I'm Todd Nielsen. I represent Brandon and Forest.
Hello, everyone. I'm Doug Bishop, and I represent part of Colchester.
Brenda Steady, East Milton, Westport.
Hi, good afternoon. Eric McGuire, representative for Rutland City.
Good afternoon, I'm Dan Noyes. I represent Johnson, Belvedere, Hyde Park, and Woolkit.
Hi, Ann Donahue. I'm from Northfield and represent Berlin as well.
And we'll start here and go all the way around the outside too.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kyle Weatherhawk. I was with Vermont Food Bank and I live in Waterbury.
I'm Jerome Hazelwood. I'm a community member from Barry.
Hi, I'm Elaine Noel Sumayan, and I live here in Montpelier. I work at Capstone Community Action Food Pantry. I'm the manager there. And yeah, I'm working there.
I'm Julia Burgess. I am a SASH coordinator with Downstreet Housing and Community Development, serving the towns of Waterbury, Waitsfield, Warren, East Montpelier, Plainfield, and Cabot. In all areas in between.
Say rep.
I'm Francis Beveridge. I'm associated with Capstone because they helped me through my living situation from being homeless to having a place. And that's in Barry where I'm living now.
I'm Nora Important, and I'm with Hunger Free Vermont, and I live in Williston, Vermont.
I'm the Nielsen, just a citizen.
I'm Amy Scott. I am the food program manager for Brock Community Action. We serve Rutland and Bennington counties. I'm Nicole Gordon. I also work for Three Squares. I'm also at Brock Community Action, Rutland.
Me. Lori Morse Community Community Action, Community Assistant.
We call her wizard, magician, you know, there's all sorts of titles. And Zoe, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Zoe Christensen. I'm a resident of East Montpelier, and I benefit hugely from Capstone and the Montpelier Food Shelf and Three Squares.
Great, thank you. Nora, why don't you join us up here and get us started? Happy to have everyone here. I didn't know if some people wanted to come up together or how, whatever, but.
All right. Thank you so much, committee, for giving us your time this afternoon. As I said, I'm Nora Horton. I live in Williston, and I'm the executive director of Hunger Free Vermont. And Hunger Free Vermont is a statewide nonprofit with a core role providing training, technical assistance, and policy support on all of the federal nutrition programs, of which Three Squares Vermont is our biggest one. And our goal is to improve how they work for all of us here in Vermont and to provide public education and outreach to make sure that everyone who needs them knows how to access them. And so I'm here today for two purposes. So one is to ask for your support on several important actions that you as legislators can take to fight hunger in Vermont. And the other purpose is to provide all of you, and especially legislators who are new to this committee and new to this body, a brief overview of Three Squares Vermont to put these requests for policy action into some context for you. So all of us collectively are here with you today to ask you to support 4 critical anti-hunger measures. One is to pass legislation to instruct the state of Vermont to opt into the SNAP Restaurant Meals Program and to appropriate $75,000 to cover restaurant startup costs to enter the program and $100,000 for a staff position to help restaurants navigate their path into this program within the Department for Children and Families. This would allow people who are elderly, people who are disabled, people who are homeless to use their SNAP or Three Squares Vermont benefits at participating restaurants. And that would make it a lot easier for people who can't shop for, cook, store, prepare meals, a way to actually use Three Squares Vermont and benefit that from that program. We are also requesting collectively $500,000 in base funding in the FY26 budget to strengthen Vermont farm viability and address food security by sustaining 2 proven programs operated through NOFA Vermont, Crop Cash Plus and Farm Share. So
sometimes because we have folks who are new, there's a lot of acronyms.
Yes.
If you can, to the extent you're able, if you use the acronym, but if you can just kind of tell people what it means.
yes, thank you so much for that reminder, Chair Wood, because we get so immersed in these programs, we forget. So NOFA is the Northeast Organic Farming Association of Vermont. And Crop Cash is a program that allows people to use their Three Squares Vermont benefits at farmers markets to buy fresh fruits and vegetables specifically. And when they do that, they actually get to double their money at the farmers market. So if they spend $10 in Three Squares Vermont benefits, they actually get $10 in tokens in addition, so that they can actually have $20 to use to buy fresh fruits and vegetables from Vermont farmers at our farmers market. So it's a great win-win program for our farms and for low-income folks to really get the healthy food that they need. And Farm Share is a subsidized CSA program for low-income folks that NOFA also operates. Again, pays farmers, the full value of that CSA share, but provides it to low-income folks at a discounted rate. And then the third request is to support a request for $5 million in a combination of base and one-time funding for the Vermont Food Bank. And this funding part of it, the base part would be to help to have a system of food distribution preparedness in place for when the next flooding disaster strikes, so that food and water can get distributed quickly and effectively to people in need under those emergency conditions. And the rest would be to purchase and distribute the additional food that's really needed now to support our local food shelves and food pantries that are dealing with really significantly increased need around the state. And then the fourth is an additional $2 million in base funding to support home delivered meals, so Meals on Wheels programs for older Vermonters and folks with disabilities. These are programs operated by our area agencies on aging. This could also help the state draw down additional matching funds through the Medicaid Global Commitment investment option. All right, so those are the 4 requests. You'll hear more about them from my colleagues and friends here. But my job now is to give you an overview of Three Squares Vermont, which is the most effective hunger relief program in our country. And it's also an extremely effective economic stimulus program. So it's really a program that benefits all of us. So this program is called many different things, and that is kind of confusing. So in Vermont, we call it Three Squares Vermont, but that is the same thing as the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP. That's its name at the federal level. and it used to be called food stamps. And it is administered, the way that people receive their benefits is on an electronic benefit transfer card, EBT card, and some people call it EBT. So you might hear all those different acronyms. And so, yeah, we all have to keep all those in mind. But this is a federal program that is administered by individual states. So most of the rules and the requirements of the program and all of the benefit funding that goes to Vermonters to purchase food comes from the federal government through the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And at the same time, states are permitted to make certain choices to choose different flexibilities and options to better tailor aspects of the program to meet the needs of a specific state's low-income population. So, for example, adding the SNAP Restaurant Meals Program option, it's one of our requests. That is an option that states can choose to take in the federal program that Vermont has not yet chosen to take. So that's one of those options and flexibilities.
Would you mind just saying that last again? I just didn't hear you guys.
Oh, of course. So the SNAP Restaurant Meals Program, which is a program that allows certain vulnerable populations, people who are over age 60, people with disabilities, and people who are homeless, to use their benefits, their SNAP or Three Squares Vermont benefits at a participating restaurant to get a meal at a restaurant. That is a program that we are asking for the state of Vermont to opt into. It's an option in the federal program that some states have taken and Vermont hasn't taken it yet. But we think that this is an option that would really benefit a lot of people in our state.
Thank you.
Okay, and in Vermont, the SNAP program, which we call Three Squares Vermont, is administered by the Department for Children and Families, Economic Services Division, inside of our Agency of Human Services. Okay. Sorry, I got myself out of order with my written stuff here. So eligibility for Three Squares Vermont is very strict, and it's determined by both the federal government and the state of Vermont. In Vermont, people need to meet an income test to qualify for Three Squares Vermont. And for a family of 4, this means monthly earnings of less than about $4,800 or annual earnings of just about $57,000 a year. So, and then benefit levels are scaled for each household based on the information they give in their application. And it's determined by their income and their monthly expenses for different allowable categories and the number of people who are in their household. So you put all those things together and a benefit amount comes out the other end. And sometimes that benefit amount could be as low as $1 a month at the end of all of that application process. Three Squares Vermont benefits, as I said, they come on an EBT, electronic benefit transfer card, that looks very similar to a regular debit card that we all use at the grocery store. So a trip to the grocery store with Three Squares Vermont can look like any other shopper's experience. And this is very much by design because we're trying to preserve people's dignity and people's privacy. However, on the back end, an EBT card is not the same. It does not work the same as a debit card in that every retailer that accepts Three Squares Vermont, they have a complex computer system that automatically identifies the items that are eligible to be purchased by SNAP with SNAP benefits. And those get deducted from your Three Squares Vermont account on your EBT card. But only those items get deducted from that account. There are more than 700 retailers in Vermont that accept Three Squares Vermont. Each month, Three Squares Vermont keeps about 13 million federal dollars. So every month, 13 million federal dollars come into our food system, to our grocery stores, our general stores, our farmers markets, through people using their Three Squares Vermont benefits to buy food for themselves and their families. And it supports our local farmers, our growers, businesses, and really entire communities. In Vermont, about 65,000 people receive Three Squares Vermont benefits and 40,000 or so households. More than half of these people are older adults, people over age 60, or children. We've heard many Three Squares Vermont participants and families refer to Three Squares Vermont as a lifeline. And in many cases, it's the only reason they are able to afford groceries every month. The state is granted options by the federal government to tailor the program to meet the needs and realities of our state. And one of these options is allowing select populations to use their Three Squares Vermont benefits to buy hot prepared meals at authorized restaurants. So that is the SNAP Restaurant Meals program. This option was created specifically to support elderly people, disabled people, and people experiencing homelessness, because these populations typically encounter access barriers and challenges with being able to buy, store, and cook food. In expanding the use of Three Squares Vermont benefits to include restaurants, restaurant meals programs aim to increase food security among these vulnerable populations by giving these select Three Squares Vermont households an option to purchase a hot and nourishing meal. And it also really helps our local restaurants. It lets them serve everybody in their community, and it lets them be able to do that while still receiving funding, in this case, federal dollars, to be able to provide that community service of everybody being able to gather together to eat. And I also want to say that, while 65,000 people is a pretty significant percentage of our population in Vermont who are currently enrolled in Three Squares Vermont, based on census income data, that's only about 40% of all the people in our state who we think are eligible for this program. And many of those folks are actually people who are in that category of people over age 60. And I think that we would have an opportunity to reach people who really do need food assistance, and would find that being able to make use of their benefits in this flexible way at restaurants would really be a powerful incentive to support them in applying and making use of this critical program, would improve health and really make a difference for people.
We're gonna I see some people have questions, but I want to make sure we have time for all the witnesses. So I'm gonna hold all questions till the end.
Great. And I'll say there are as many as 58,000 people in Vermont whose income would make them eligible for Three Squares Vermont, and who are part of one of those groups who would be served by the Restaurant Meals program right now. So that was a lot of people in our state, 58,000 people. So Three Squares Vermont is just one part of the safety net, and it can't meet the full need all on its own. It's not designed to do that. It's a supplemental food assistance program. So we need to make sure that every part of the safety net is strong, and others here today will speak to those other parts of the safety net, because that includes local food access programs, Vermont Food Bank programs, and meal delivery programs for older and disabled adults. The real fundamental message we want to convey to you today is that together we can work to ensure that everyone in Vermont at all times has the food they need to thrive. And you as legislators have a critical role to play in making policy decisions that ensure food security for all. When the state of Vermont invests in meaningful support for food security, the positive impacts are felt across the entire state. These are policy choices in front of you this year that can support food security for all of us who live here. And I'm going to stop there so that we have time for everybody. But I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Jerome. You're next.
Hi, everybody. I've done this one other time today, so this is really all new for me, so.
Warmed up though, right?
Yeah, if I'm not loud enough or if I'm too loud, just let me know. My name's Jerome Hazelwood. I'm currently a resident here in Barrie. I live at the Pierre Motel. They have a voucher program there. I'm here to ask you to pass legislation and instruct the state to opt into the SNAP Restaurant Meals Program, appropriate $75,000 to cover the restaurant startup costs, and another $100,000 to create a staff position within DCF to administer the program. For myself personally, it comes down to my inability to be as practical as possible financially when my cooking and storing options are so limited. I'm on disability. So there's not a lot of money there. So I only have a dorm-sized refrigerator that doesn't freeze or keep things cold. It's a really old. Okay. It also inhibits my ability to eat healthier foods due to lack of storage. I mean, if you saw my room, there's nowhere to put anything. So it's more trips to the grocery store. I managed to get around the fact I have a microwave, knowing that certain foods are not appropriate for cooking in one. If I take my time with meal preparation, I've made things that are suitable, such as kale and broccoli, but it takes much longer. My disability limits what I can do. Again, taking into consideration all of this, there's still the problem of storage. And I actually made a quiche about a week ago, but it took forever. So this can be a problem because I have physical challenges that I'm dealing with that require me to shop more often. It's very painful later in the month after that many trips. When my wife was alive, she passed. And I was healthier before my surgery. I was shopping much less than I do now. One thing that did seem to help was the meals program. It allowed me to purchase hot restaurant prepared food at various dining establishments. The time I saved was phenomenal and my diet was a bit more diverse then. In an ideal situation, I would have a pantry or cupboards and a large but standard size refrigerator for holding produce and dairy. This is the next best thing though, I think, for me. It's less stressful for me physically, and that means fewer x-rays, medications, and hospital visits. Again, I ask that you support people like me passing legislation to instruct the state to opt into the SNAP Restaurant Meals Program, appropriate the $75,000 to cover restaurant startup costs, and another $100,000 to create a staff position within DCF to administer the program. Thank you for having me, everybody. I know it's kind of a rotten day and you guys have been really busy, so.
Oh,
We appreciate you being.
I was gonna say, given the fact that it's kind of a rotten day. Appreciate everybody being here, so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did anybody, you're gonna wait until after?
Wait till the end. We have a amount of time and I want to make sure everybody gets a chance, but then, yeah, stay here, please, and if there are questions at the end, that'd be great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Amy.
Hello.
Hello, and thank you for allowing me to speak to you today. My name is Amy Scott. I'm a resident of Rutland County. I manage the food program for Brock Community Action in both Rutland and in Bennington counties. I am here today to ask you to please support Vermont Food Bank's request for $5 million in the FY26 budget to ensure Vermont Food Bank and their partners are prepared when disasters strike our neighbors in towns across Vermont, as well as to purchase and distribute food and support the network of community-based food shelves and meal sites. I run one of the most active food shelves in the state of Vermont. I grew up in Vermont, graduated from Woodstock Union High School, and attended BSU Castleton. In my early 20s, I relocated to a small island at the base of North Carolina's Outer Banks, where I lived for 18 years. I weathered many storms on the Crystal Coast. The most personal of these was Hurricane Irene, a Category 1 storm that landed 35 miles to my north on August 27th, 2011 at Cape Lookout National Seashore. Irene knocked out power for a few days and closed up our little restaurant for a week. I remember this storm not because of how it affected me in North Carolina,
but because of how it affected my mom in Gaysville, Vermont. After Irene, my mom was on her own island. Route 107 was badly damaged and the roads around the town were washed out. There was no way for mom to get to the store, and she was caring for my grandmother who had end-stage Alzheimer's. There is limited cell service in Gaysville, Vermont. I could only watch terrified as the national news showed demolished parts of my home state. Once I knew that my mom was out of immediate danger, I wondered how she was set up for survival. In North Carolina, we have emergency food and water, and we're prepared. In the aftermath of Irene, my mom said that she and her neighbors shared what was in their freezers and they stayed close to home. Eventually, their thawing food became questionable. When we managed to have a conversation, I was just worried about her and what they would eat. Just when my mom and her community were at risk of being hungry, the Army Corps of Engineers came to the rescue. Roads were rebuilt and the stories of my ATV riding heroes bringing supplies to Gaysville residents slowed. So I was relieved to know that help had arrived. We have now learned, we collectively as Vermonters have now learned, that we need to be prepared for larger and smaller emergencies. If Irene's devastation hadn't been statewide, would the Army Corps of Engineers have brought food? Who would have stepped in when the food ran out and the neighbors had shared all that they had had? Vermonters rely on the Vermont Food Bank and its network of food resource partners who step in for our everyday emergencies. I am a resident of Vermont again. I bought one of those 100-year-old farmhouses in Rutland that's always in danger of failing somehow. I serve food to my community Monday through Friday at Brock Community Action in this beautiful place that I love. I serve 80 to 100 people daily that are just trying to get through the last disaster. The boiler went down, the freezer failed, a car accident or an unplanned medical expense has left them with a budget too tight to afford groceries. I recently met a young father of 5 shopping with us while his wife was hospitalized. He needed food for his kids to take to school. Without the Vermont Food Bank, I could not alleviate this burden for these families. And it makes me think of my mom. When I was hired at Brock Community Food Shelf in 2021, 3 Squares Vermont was fully funded. This allowed participants to shop at grocery stores for most of the month without having to use food shelves as often. In April 2022, 3 Squares Vermont was cut back to pre-pandemic levels. Currently, my shelves are the barest that they've been in my experience. Due to shockingly high food prices, we are seeing growing food insecurity. 3 Squares Vermont, again, has work requirements, and Rutland County has one of the highest unemployment rates in the state. In 2024, Brock Community Food Shelf spent $55,000 with the Vermont State Food Bank, and we received 857,806 pounds of food. My food cost is 6 cents a pound. That is big money and a big hustle for a rural food shelf. The Vermont Food Bank supports hundreds of food shelves like mine. Therefore, I'm here on 3 Squares Awareness Day to ask you for your help. I urge you to please make sure that I have food on my shelves. We need to relieve some of the financial and emotional burden of food insecure families, seniors, and disabled residents of Vermont. I will continue to do the heavy lifting, and you can support Vermont Food Bank's request for $5 million in the FY26 budget to ensure Vermont Food Bank and their partners are prepared when disaster strikes our neighbors in towns across Vermont, as well as to purchase and distribute food and support the network of community-based food shelves and meal sites like mine. Thank you for your time and your continued support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Glad to return back to your home state.
Yeah. I'm so glad to be here. It's the only place we can affect change.
Okay, Zoe.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm sorry to address you from Zoom, but I don't have snow tires good enough for this day. Hello, and thank you for listening to me. My name is Zoe Christensen, and I live in East Montpelier. I'm here today to voice my support for Three Squares Vermont and to ask you to support Vermont Food Bank's request for $5 million in the FY26 budget to ensure Vermont Food Bank and their partners are prepared when disasters strike our neighbors in town across Vermont, as well as to purchase and distribute food and to support the network of community-based food shelves and meal sites. I'm a 9th-generation Vermonter, a 4th-generation Vermont politician. Some of you may have actually worked with my dad, and I grew up on my family's dairy farm. I'm the vice chair of the East Montpelier Select Board and a commissioner on the Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission. I'm also disabled, and I completely depend and rely on SNAP, or EBT, Three Squares. Thanks to Three Squares and Capstone Community Action, I've been able to eat 3 meals a day for the first time in my adult life. These programs literally make my survival possible. If it wasn't for Capstone Community Action and the Montpelier Food Shelf, I would not have access to food after my benefits run out before the end of the month, which they inevitably do. I would say anywhere between 2 to 3 weeks into the month. And my disability benefits are also too small to cover that gap of time. Because I can eat, I can survive, and therefore I can contribute to the best of my capacity for the community that I love, that I grew up in. Investing in the food bank's request for $5 million in the budget is an investment in the practical well-being of our communities. As someone who has benefited directly from programs like Three Squares Vermont and Capstone, I understand firsthand the essential role that these services play in ensuring that Vermonters can stay healthy and contribute to our communities. Supporting this request means providing reliable support for disaster preparedness, food distribution, and the network of community-based food shelves and meal sites that so many depend on. I urge you to support Vermont Food Bank's request for $5 million so that every Vermonter has the opportunity to thrive. And being the municipal politician that I am and understanding a little bit about budget requests, I can't leave here today without making an unconventional suggestion of where to potentially find extra funds for these requests. I've noticed in my 5 years on disability that there is no department currently in the state that actively encourages the UVM medical monopoly to follow ADA regulations. And as a result, I've been retaliated against as a patient and dismissed from services that could actually alleviate my disability and put me back into the workforce. So in conjunction with my request for extra funding, I suggest looking into this area as a potential way to find the extra funds. Thank you.
Thank you, Zoe. Appreciate it. Carrie, I'm just wondering, I'm not sure how long your testimony is, but if you don't mind, because you're in the building a lot, can we have you come back? Okay, because I would love to have at least 5 minutes for people to be able to ask questions of the witnesses who are not here on a daily basis, if that's okay.
I would be happy to talk with any of you another time.
Okay, thank you. So now's the time to ask a question of any of the witnesses that we've had so far, and thank you to the witnesses. Go ahead, Representative McGuire.
Yeah, and I know you shared this with me on it, but I think it's good that the rest of the committee hears it. Roughly, how many people does Brock serve on a daily basis in regards to coming on in and utilizing the food shelf?
So our food shelf right now, on a regular day, is serving 75 to 80 people, and on Fridays, because we have special hours built in for seniors and for folks that came in through USCRI, the US Committee on Refugees and Immigrants, we do a special hour for them. So those days we're typically doing about 140 people. So,
And that's just in Rutland County or both
that's
counties?
just in Rutland. Bennington County, our food shelf is much smaller. So in Bennington County, we're typically doing around 20 or so families. But when I say people, we're not talking about the number of people that reside in the homes of those folks. This is just individuals that are coming in to shop for their families. It's a household. Households, yeah. And we're only open for 2 hours a day. Can I offer some context?
Just a second, I want to make sure people have an opportunity for questions. Myself being one. Nora, one of the areas you talked about, was the number of people given the, information we have from, income reports and wherever they come from. That we are, there's potentially really thousands more people who are eligible for services and that probably a large share of those are people who are older Vermonters, who don't access services. Do you have any recommendations for how we might reach those people?
Yeah, I mean, I think, thank you for that question. Outreach is a challenge. I think that, the application process for the program is not an easy one.
I've just tried helping a 92-year-old woman with it, and it is not easy.
Yeah.
I will agree.
We have a simplified application for people who are over age 60, and that is really helpful. At the same time, I think that often the benefit amounts that people qualify for, as I said, like you could end up with a benefit of $1, $16. That doesn't really feel worth it, given the cost of food for people to continue to do all of the steps they have to do to get into and stay on Three Squares Vermont. And so I think that there's a lot of ways that we could try to improve the application process. And I know that still at the same time, the Department for Children and Families is stretched very, very thin. One thing I really appreciate from this committee is supporting the language and budget adjustment to have the state of Vermont use the discretionary months available to it to help people who have a problem with their paperwork or getting it submitted, or an injury that stops them from working when they're subject to work requirements for a little bit of time, that we could give people an extra month of benefits and not have them fall off the program and then have to try to reapply. So we also have a lot of people who fall off, then they reapply, then they, and that churn, as it's called, also really, people give up,
Yeah.
and so I think there's multiple challenges that get us there. I think more flexibility, more simplicity in the program to the degree that that's possible for us to do at the state level is one way to help.
Okay, folks, thank you all for being here. Really appreciate it. And especially folks who came from that far away.